Good evening, it's 7 o'clock. Plan Commission is Tuesday, July 15th, 2025, in the council chambers. Call to order, roll call.
Sure. Mayor T-Strake.
Here.
Councilmember O'Reilly.
Here.
Commissioner Caprillion.
Here.
Commissioner Bernardi.
Here.
Commissioner Frederick.
Here.
Commissioner Michael.
Here.
Rita Meyer will not be with us tonight, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 3, approval of agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Who's
Second.
that?
Commissioner Kim made the
Okay,
motion,
Okay.
Second.
and
Okay,
Commissioner
got it.
John will second it. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, approval of minutes, June 17th, 2025 meeting.
I'll approve the minutes.
Commissioner Kim approves the minutes.
I'll second that.
Alderman Mike seconds it. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, identify possible conflicts of interest. Please be advised per City Policy 3.340 that any member of the body shall declare a conflict if they have an interest, financial or otherwise direct or indirect, or engage in a business or transaction or professional activity or incur an obligation of any nature that is in conflict with the proper discard of the body's official duties. Seeing no conflicts of interest, we will move on to number 6, citizen comments. Citizen comments? Citizen comments? Seeing none, we're speeding right through this. This is grand. Item number 7, public hearing regarding the proposed boundary and project plan amendment number 1 for tax increment district number 11, City of Marshfield, Wisconsin. Presenter Josh Miller, Cedar Corporation.
Good evening. I guess if you're okay with it, I do a quick presentation, or and I don't know if it'll be quick,
Absolutely.
but a presentation on the item, and then you can hold the public hearing.
Perfect.
All right. Bryce, can I take over the screen? Are you controlling it? It might have been a mistake.
We want to see the two of you fight it out.
Yeah, pay for
I should be out of it.
There you go. I got her. Thank you. All right. I think there's at least one new face since we last talked about tax incremental finance district. Should I do a real brief overview? So basically what a tax incremental finance district is it's an area of land that the city identifies and identifies for future growth and development. What that ultimately does is they basically look at all the values that are currently within that area. Any tax revenue that comes off of those values that are there currently go to the 4 taxing jurisdictions, which is the city, the county, the technical college, and the school district. So all of them get their share of the mill rate. When you create a TIF district over a piece of land, any new value that's created after that district is established, all the tax revenue goes to the city, and they can utilize those funds for project costs that are identified in a project plan. And we'll be talking about a project plan amendment tonight. So that is a short, really high-level version of it, but basically it gives the city, it's a financing mechanism and economic development tool that the city has to help with infrastructure projects, spur on development, add job growth, things like that, and in some cases add housing. So the city has used it quite effectively throughout the years. And tonight we're going to be talking about an amendment to one of the districts in the city. So first off, the location of the district it's TID number 11, and it's on the southeast side of the city, really at the corner of Draxler Drive and at the corner of Veterans Parkway and Heritage Drive on the northeast corner of that intersection. That district has already been established, and we're looking to amend it, adding a 10-acre parcel and then the Draxler Drive right-of-way, just to allow for the public improvements for that future street, to improve that street and to extend it. A little bit closer, you can see the project boundary. The blue area is what is currently part of TID 11, and the yellow area is what's being proposed to be amended. So along with the amendment, we're adding territory to the district, to the district, and we're also adding some project costs, identified projects that the city can undertake utilizing that increment from the taxes that are going to be generated in the district. So the main purpose of the amendment, there's two reasons. One is, anytime you have a TID boundary, it has to be, all the parcels have to be contiguous and whole. And what that means is a TID boundary cannot bisect a parcel. So this 10-acre piece to the east, right now it's a whole parcel, but the way that the developer, the business that wants to develop it needs to have the space configured, they can't keep that parcel line straight up and down like that. They're moving it to the west. And so in order for them to be able to do that and build their third building over in that parcel, we need to realign the project plan or the TID boundary to align with that parcel. So you can kind of leave it like that for a little bit, but eventually the Department of Revenue wants you to clean that up to make sure you have whole contiguous parcels in your district. So this is how it looks currently, or when we originally started this process. They are proposing, so this CSM is just the right side of the east side of the TID, but this lot 3 essentially covers the 10 acres, and then a little bit of the west portion dips into the current TID boundary. So we're bringing that whole parcel, all of lot 3, into the TID, so that the district is no longer splitting up a parcel. So that will allow them to they're looking at 3 different facilities or 3 different buildings on this site. So by them, I mean iState. They're the company that's in Marshfield, but they're relocating to this site, and they're adding high-tech light manufacturing facilities to this TID. Really exciting project that the city's been working with them on for a while. But we're to the point now where they're going to start developing it, and they need to realign the parcel boundaries to accommodate their campus, essentially. So the other part of the other reason for the amendment is really to add project costs. The Draxler Drive is an older road that the city took over. It was a town road when it was annexed a number of years ago. And there needs to be improvements to that road. The infrastructures or the utilities are already there, but they want to extend the road and then curve it to the west to connect to the Veterans Parkway. So that would be allowed a second access point into that TIF district, into that whole area. One access point out of Heritage with Quick Trip there, plus you're adding this manufacturing business and Draxler Trucking. It really is limiting in space. So trying to get another access point onto there is pretty important to the district. There's also some additional vacant space that having that other access point will really make that more marketable and more developable. So those are really the 2 main reasons that we're adding some of those project costs to address the infrastructure. In order to do that infrastructure, though, the city has to do a traffic impact analysis or assessment, and that's a pretty expensive cost, but there's some planning that goes along with that. The DOT will not give us access to that highway without that analysis. So that's another expense that the city would have to incur, but that can be paid for with TIF dollars when there's increment in that district. So initially, talking about the schedule is usually about a month process for an amendment. We did the first step earlier today with the Joint Review Board. The Joint Review Board is the 4 taxing entities: the technical school, the school district, the county, and the city, and then there's 1 member at large. So those are that's the Joint Review Board. They get to ultimately decide whether or not the amendment can go forward. They had their first meeting today to discuss, to be introduced to the project and elect their chairperson and member at large. And then at the very end of the process, after the Plan Commission review it, after the public hearing, after the council reviews it, if it continues to get approved, it goes to the Joint Review Board for a final approval. The district can either, if the Joint Review Board approves it, then it goes forward. If they deny it, then it would not happen. But we had a quorum today, and it was a good discussion. There weren't any real concerns with what we were talking about. So so far, so good. But yes, the next step is the Plan Commission and public hearing tonight. And then next week, the council will be reviewing this, hopefully looking to adopt it by resolution. And then 2 weeks from tonight, it would go to the Joint Review Board. I've touched on a little bit of the whole purpose. I mean, the purpose is to add tax base, add jobs, allow for logical growth within the city. The 10 acres is now part of the city. And the additional right-of-way in Draxler Drive, the reason that was not originally part of the district was that was in the town of Marshfield prior to when the district was originally created. So you can't put property in the TIF district that's not in the city yet. So the district was created, that right of way got annexed a year later, and now we have the opportunity to bring it in with this amendment. So the summary of findings, and I won't go into detail on that. This is really more for the Common Council and the joint review. But there are a number of things that you have to look at as when you're doing a creation of a district and an amendment. There's just a different, you have to at least 50% of the district has to be either commercial, industrial, or residential. We meet that threshold. If we were to have housing in here, only 35% of the district could be newly platted housing. We don't have any housing, but that's one provision that has to be met. No more than 35% is going to be retail. And so the other main component is that no more than 12% of the equalized value of the city can be part of the increment of all the TIF districts, and then the new value that you're creating in the district that you're amending or creating. So the city is about $2.2 billion of equalized value, and we are well under that, even with this amendment. We're adding about $300,000 of base value to the district. And once the new increment, once the new buildings are put in there, that's going to add more increment value, which will affect that number. But we're not concerned about that as far as this approval process. The district description, I have a little edit just to add that Draxler Drive right away into this project plan. So if you do go forward and approve this as presented, I would ask that you include this little edit that just adds the Draxler Drive right away to the 10-acre annex parcel. The existing use is pretty much undeveloped. It's farmland. There is a house on the east on the parcel that's annexed that will be going away. But as we talked about, the percentage of land use, the makeup of the district is pretty much almost 98% either commercial or industrial. So we're well over the 50% threshold. There are some wetlands in here, and any wetlands are automatically excluded from the acreage calculation from the district. So in our legal description, when we submit that to the council, that's the last line that says excludes all wetlands. And doesn't mean you can't fill or modify wetlands. It's just wetlands are by state statute not included in the TIF. So the zoning, it's already set up when it was annexed. It's light industrial, so it's suitable for their proposed use. And this, when the zoning went through, this was reviewed against the comprehensive plan, so it's should match the master plan okay. The additional projects that we're looking at doing, I touched on just infrastructure projects. There's additional administrative costs, planning costs to amend the district, and then also financing costs if the city's going to borrow. Likely, they're looking at, I think, 2027 for probably Draxler Drive extension, and the traffic impact analysis could be anytime now, basically, because it's going to take a little while to design and then build that road. So that there'll be additional financing costs to that. And so we outline all that in the project plan. We continue to keep the original project costs in here, even though some of the projects were done. So the original project costs were mainly to extend sanitary and water to get to the Quick Trip. So when the Quick Trip first started here, this TIF district was created to provide services to that. So that the original purpose for creating the district, without the TIF district being established, those businesses wouldn't be there. And I-State wouldn't be able to come here either because there wouldn't be utilities to that. And along with that, I believe sanitary was extended under Highway 10 just in case someday, I think. Actually, I think that was done before the TIF, if I'm not mistaken. And ineligible project costs. So any costs that are incurred outside the TIF district would be or outside the city limits. So there might be some, the TIF district boundary is along the city limits, and there might be some small infrastructure connections that need to be made to the Veterans Parkway or Heritage if we're cleaning up. Those are not eligible costs because it's outside the city. The number 11, the economic feasibility study, we'll touch on that at the end here, but just to show you that there were some projected increment values that we're estimating. We have some projected financing models, and then the cash flow projections do show that even if the city does take on those additional project costs, based on the estimated increment, the district will pay off early, which is what you want to see. The district has already been in, I think, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So it's already been around a while. So we have limited years left. You have 20 years of the TIF district to make expenditure, or 15 years to make expenditures and 20 years to capture the increment value from any new value, taxes from the new value created. Not proposing any new methods to finance any project costs. No relocation is proposed. I mentioned that there's under 35% is expected to be, less than 35% expected to be devoted to retail. We don't have an early expected termination date. It could be 2033, but we're not anticipating that. In any new TIF district created after January 1 of 25, the Joint Review Board has to estimate when the TIF district is going to close. We don't have to do that now, but if they're right, essentially, if the city closes a TIF district early and they meet the Joint Review Board's projection, they get, I think, I don't know if it's a bigger percent of net new construction, or there's some benefit to the city by closing it early if the Joint Review Board, I don't know, it's like a contest or something, I don't know. But there's really no benefit in the Joint Review Board having it close early. If you close it at the date that it's expected to terminate, you still get that benefit because you're matching what the Joint Review Board says. It's just an effort from the legislatures to try to get you to close a TIF early. That's essentially it. And I don't know a lot of people that want to keep them open as long as if the project costs are paid off. But anyways, so annex property, one of the caveats is if property is annexed, I think since 2001 or whatever, annexed after 2001, but it's more than 3 years have not passed, the city has to enter in an agreement to pay the lost taxes for 5 years to the town. The city has already done that. They have already made that payment. The annexation happened last year. So we will have that provision in the council resolution, but it was yeah, John.
Can I ask a question about that now? Yeah. Or to wait for public hearing?
It's a I mean, I think you could.
Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah, all right. That 5 years of taxes, is that just based on that land value?
Well, the land and the house value.
Oh, there's a house there, okay.
Yeah, so it's about a $300,000 value, but you're only paying the town's portion.
Yeah.
So if you look at the mill rate, it's about a $19 per thousand. The town's portion might be 5 mills per thousand or something.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure that we're not talking about like, once the project's completed with the projected.
Oh, right, no, it's the year in which it was annexed. A very good question, because that would be hefty.
Significantly different dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and typically these are very small dollar amounts for most of the annexations we have.
Yep. So, and then the amendment, the city, any municipality can amend the TIF district boundary up to 4 times, but you can do a project plan amendment as often as you want to. So even though we're adding 2 different pieces, it's one amendment for this boundary. So, and it's basically landlocked by the town. So unless additional annexations happen, there's probably unlikely to have more amendments. We're utilizing one of the 4 amendments tonight or with this process. And then real quick, just go through the mapping of this is a map you've seen already. The city can also make project costs within a half mile that directly benefit the TIF. As you can see, it's all on the top part of north of the TIF, which really doesn't lend itself to really benefiting the TIF. So there'd be unlikely that there's costs associated with that. This just shows the existing land uses and conditions, which will be now this is the zoning. So you have commercial and industrial, light industrial zoning. I don't know, that's future uses. This is the zoning map. And then these are the tax parcels, and then this is basically the proposed project cost. Really the only physical project cost would be the infrastructure improvements. The city could provide assistance financially for a new development. And there's a little piece north of Quick Trip right now that's does have potential for future development, and it's vacant. So there's a possibility for additional commercial development in that district. So this is the value. John, if you look at the amendment value, we had assessed value of about $278,300. That's the assessed value. So that's the amount the city was paying taxes on when it was added. That's not the tax bill. It's just what the value, the assessed value was for the tax bill. Legal description, and then just to touch on quickly the financial feasibility. So the other part of this, you can see at this table, I don't know if you can see that. This is something we'll go over the Joint Review Board. So the reason why the Joint Review Board gets to get the final say on this is they're essentially giving up future tax revenue for the allowance of this creation of the district. And the reason they do that is because usually without the TIF district creation or amendment, this tax base wouldn't happen. And so they're saying, but we have to show at some point what proportional share of the projected revenue they're foregoing. So this will be something that we'll be sharing with them and is an important number because it's, you know, you can see the city gets the bulk of it, then the school district, the county, and then the technical college at the end. But it's just something that we're required to share with the DOR or the Joint Review Board, and it makes sense because that's what this is again, a projection. These are not hard dollars. This may not come to fruition exactly as we project, but, and it could be higher than this, but this is just a number that we need to provide. So these are the new costs that we're projecting, almost $3 million of new project costs that we're proposing. And again, the city is not obligated to make any expenditure going forward. It's basically waiting until development has started or is imminent, and to ensure that these costs are not just going to be, you know, we're not giving Steve a blank check as soon as we approve for $3 million once this district is approved. So that is not what's happening. And so we have some development assumptions. Again, these are projections based on some high-level numbers that we have, and we've tried to figure out what the estimated assessed values are coming online. And again, these could vary, could be a higher or lower. The revenue projections based on those assessed values, so we take those values and multiply that by the mill rate and over the phased approach the timing of the district or the amendment. And then last, this is the proposed estimated financing plan. So the general obligation debt, this is, you know, we work with Ellers, the financial advisor for the city, to come up with this information. And then lastly is really the cash flow, because that's really the important piece here is if the city incurs these project costs, will this be paid off? And as mentioned, the termination time period for the district would be 2036. It's a 20-year district. But this is projecting to close out by 2033. So still a few more years left in the district, and based on the projected revenue coming in, should pay off quickly. But that's what you want to see, especially in a mixed-use district, that is going to have a positive cash flow at the end of its life. And the nice thing about this, obviously, is having the jobs and the business. But when the district is ready to close, the city can opt to do an affordable housing amendment, and they can capture one final year of increments. So if this is accurate, you know, the revenue coming in 2033 is about $480,000. Well, if the city decides to do this, they can extend the TIF district for one more year and capture that increment and use that for housing. You know, 75% for affordable, 25% for improving the overall housing stock in the city. So that's a good chunk of money, and maybe that'll be more when we get to the end of the life of the TIF, but that's a real positive, could have a real positive impact on the housing in Marshfield. So with that, really the next item, I'll touch on this. I'll let you turn it over to open the public hearing, Mayor, and then we can talk about the resolution if there's any questions.
Certainly. Public hearing is now open. Any comments and questions in public hearing? Public hearing is now open.
I have some questions. Maybe I'm missing this too. Who is the business that's trying to develop this area?
So it's iState.
Okay, and you said they already exist in Marshfield?
Yep.
So I'm assuming that they've looked at, I guess my question would be if their financing didn't come through, how does that affect this district or the city?
Well, the city's going to wait to see them build out their development. I think the timing of the infrastructure would be, right now, the district has a positive cash flow and is expected to pay off early already. So there is going to be some cash in the district if they want to take on the traffic impact analysis. But I think the business is planning on starting construction this summer, and I think even phase 2 starting this summer and phase 3 by next year. So there'll be, should be a positive, we'll be able to see what kind of value there's going to be before the city commits to spending the $2.6 million on a road.
Well, and the maintenance and infrastructure, I'm assuming they're using the TID the money coming in from that to cover that. Who pays those costs after the TID closes?
Well, so the project cost, the infrastructure cost will be paid off. That's what we showed in the cash flow model, is that debt service for that road will be paid off before the TIF district is created, or before the TIF district terminates. Going forward, maintenance and snow plowing and all that, the city does pick that up. That's just part of the cost of doing business with the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments in public hearing?
Thank you. I was just curious, when you were looking at that northern boundary within the half mile radius,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, isn't there some raised, like, storm sewer manholes out in that field? Is that for projected expansion or something? Because they're real high, but that doesn't look like it's in that area. It looked like that was in the white section. Just curious what those were for, or if that's the city owns those, or what.
Yeah, so there's a map showing, yeah, so this is, I don't know where all of them are. There might be one in the TID, but if they are along Veterans Parkway, they're outside the city limits. But yeah, they're either in the TID or they're outside the city limits, because the rest of it, anything north along Veterans Parkway is in the town of Marshfield.
Any other questions, comments in public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. And I need a motion and a second, and then we can make discussion on this project.
Move to approve.
Yeah, second.
Any comments, questions from anyone? Seeing, yes, go ahead, Jake.
I have a question. Is there any way that the city can end up holding all of the debt for this
That was my
by
question.
changing, what if like I-State changes? I
Right.
don't know, is there something they can change? Like you had mentioned the word campus before
Mhm.
versus, you know, whatever else there is. Is there any way, I guess, the city can be on the hook for this? Or is this gonna
Like if
be
their
pretty much?
financing doesn't come through.
Well, so again, the city is, yeah, because the city's not going to start infrastructure plans until they're essentially either fully built out or mostly built out. And these projections are a bit conservative, so I guess because the developer's not asking the city, the infrastructure is not going to be tied to the developer per se. So worst case scenario, the developer builds and in 5 years they go bankrupt and they're, whatever. Theoretically, I suppose there would be some challenges there to make that work. But
Yeah, I would agree with what Josh is saying. I mean, we're not going to expend any funds for the improvements that we're talking about until monies are steadily coming in. The project is basically complete. And yeah, what if they go out of business and suddenly the value of that property drops? We'll get less tax revenue as a result of the devalue of it by the assessor. But, by that time, it probably will be at a point in the life of the TIF district and the expenditures involved. It probably won't drop that far and that fast. It will probably have collected most of it anyway. The main thing is we're not going to expend money for any of these projects until we have a completed project effectively.
yeah, the only one we could do early would be the traffic impact analysis, just for the
Yeah,
timing of it
right.
to be able to design
Mhm.
appropriately. But I believe they're already ready to go here to get the project started with construction, so.
I was thinking actual infrastructure, but yeah, you're right, the traffic impact analysis.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as far as the TID districts go, I've dealt with, this one is about as safe as I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
Looking at I-State, if anybody's familiar with them, Jake, I'm sure you are, they're across from Hardee's on the south end right now, the old V&H campus there. So it's a large business and very able to take care of it, so.
It would be different if we were offering incentives of some type, where the city was on the hook for actual cash payment to the developer to get this project going. But again, they're financing this themselves. It's just a matter of timing the improvements that Josh was talking about to make sure we're buffering for ourselves to not get ahead of ourselves.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Sure. Let's see, Commissioner Michael,
Yes.
Commissioner, let's see in order, Frederick,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Caprillion,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Reilly,
Yes.
Mayor T-Strake.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Item number 8, Consideration and possible action on resolution number PC 2025-01, resolution of the Plan Commission recommending proposed boundary amendment and adopting the proposed project plan amendment number 1 for tax increment of District 11, City of Marshfield, Wisconsin. Presenter Josh Miller, Cedar Corp.
All right, sorry, I thought that was kind of what you did last time, but we'll, just the resolution is really the important part. So the Plan Commission is essentially adopting a resolution, recommending that adopting the boundaries and recommending the project plan and identifying that these findings have been met. And the one I already touched on is it's meeting the 12%, which does show that in the project plan. It is feasible and is in conformity with the master plan. And that basically you're recommending, he approves and adopts the project plan number 1 for tax incremental District 11, and does designate and recommend the proposed amended district boundaries for common council approval, so.
And not that you couldn't take another vote, but I think you could construe that you just approved that with the last motion, that that's what it was you were approving, because that encapsulates the plan itself that he's described.
Correct. So if we're all in agreement?
Yep.
Perfect. We'll move on to item number 9. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for that great report. Discussion regarding potential text amendments from major streets setback requirements. Boy, presenter Bryce Embrick, planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a topic that staff has talked about in the past. Before 2020, we had discussed some changes to major street setbacks. And the original plan was to bring forward the changes as a part of the zoning code update. That never came to fruition due to staff turnover and just priorities. So, and you know, it's 2025, and we just think that it's time to at least present this to the Plan Commission and see if you guys would like to move forward with some changes for this. So, a little bit of background on what a major street setback is. So, according to our code, a major street is considered an arterial road as classified in the 2007 comprehensive plan. So here's the map from the comprehensive plan, once again from 2007, not the latest 2017 one. So basically any road that's shown in red or green would be considered a major street. And then any property that's located along that major street would have a 50-foot setback requirement. Now, there are some exceptions if you are in the downtown mixed-use district. And then there is some setback averaging, procedures that you can get an exception to match, the neighboring properties in certain areas. So along Central Avenue, you'll kind of notice that there's buildings that aren't 50 feet, but that's mostly because they are matching the neighboring properties, or they were built before there was a major street setback requirement. So a couple things to note. We originally wanted to change how we define these because we adopted the updated comp plan in 2017, and that did not match the 2007 functional classification map. And so it got confusing because every time we had to review a new development, we had to go back to the 2007 one, even though conditions had changed. And so we just think, we thought that was a perfect time to try to update it shortly after the comp plan was, adopted. And then on top of that, we kind of talked internally about how it seemed like an arbitrary requirement to have a 50-foot requirement, for something along McMillan, but then also like along Central Avenue, more towards the downtown area, but not necessarily in the DMU. It didn't seem to make sense as to why we were requiring that. And so after some discussion with the Public Works Department, the engineering staff, we kind of talked about the main purpose for the major street setback requirement was to allow for potential acquisition of right-of-way, where, so for example, along Peach, there might be, and on here it's shown as collector, but I'll show you in a little bit kind of a map that we created. Along Peach, there's a need to increase the right-of-way width in order to meet the minimum standard according to our Chapter 19 subdivision section. So for example, we had come to the Plan Commission a couple months ago about for a certified survey map. They were going to dedicate 7 feet along McMillan in order to increase the right-of-way width to the appropriate amount. And the reason why we would do that is if there's any future expansions of roadway, if there's going from a 2-lane to a 2-lane with 1 turning lane, going from a 2-lane to 4-lane, whatever the project would be, that would allow for the city to have adequate right-of-way to work within that instead of having to acquire, properties, or in this case, the reason why you have a major street setback requirement is to reduce the amount of times that you would make a property non-conforming. So if, for example, on Central Avenue, if a business was to, or if a building was constructed at 20 feet, which is the typical setback, but we need to acquire 10 feet to make it meet the Chapter 19 requirements, the new setback would be 10 feet, which would be considered non-conforming. So we wanted to try to eliminate or at least alleviate the amount of times that would happen. So based on that discussion, we took a deeper dive into kind of where we would need some right-of-way with. So we looked at, basically I created a map showing which roads we still needed to acquire some right-of-way in order to meet the Chapter 19 requirements. And then we also took a look at whether or not it was a major, minor, or collector road. And then we also took a look to see, what would the setback requirement have to be in order to meet that requirement and still keep it so that the structure would be a legally conforming structure. So what we're looking to hopefully accomplish is to create a less arbitrary approach to this and to specifically, kind of identify where it seems appropriate to have an increased setback to still, meet that intent, but not just require it for every single property along a major street, which we found that to be kind of unnecessary in a lot of cases. And in a lot of cases, we also allowed the setback averaging as well. So it didn't seem to have the intended effect that it needed to. And we think that this is a better approach. So what we found out was that the major arterials are actually good to go in terms of the right-of-way width. They meet the requirements in Chapter 19. So we removed those entirely. So that was mostly Central and Veterans Parkway. And then you'll see we have a number of minor arterials, mostly in the older parts of town. So Peach, Oak Avenue, Lincoln, those we still need to acquire some right-of-way in order to meet those requirements. As well as we included some collectors, not that many in comparison to minor arterial. But what we identified was that if we could just make the new major street setback the requirement of the underlying zoning district plus 10 feet, that would meet our intended goal of, preserving enough room for, possible acquisition of right-of-way and still maintaining a legal non-conforming structure. So for an example here, a property located in the CMU district, so let's pretend that we're up on McMillan, if they would typically have a 20-foot setback requirement, if it's located along this portion right here, it would then have a 30-foot setback requirement. So it still kind of increases it, but it doesn't increase it by, 30 feet, which is, quite a difference and kind of changes the form of the property. So we think that this is one way to kind of meet that intent, but then still, kind of respect the rights of, developers, property owners, business owners, et cetera. And I think the most important thing too is just to update it to be applicable to roads where we actually need to acquire that right away, and not follow a map from 2007. So we're not looking for any type of vote tonight, but I just wanted to introduce this topic to you as something that we've been talking about for a long time, and then get your opinion on if you want staff to come back with text amendments. Or if you want to just keep it as it is currently written. I will note that we have a good portion of, the text amendment and this map, for example, is completed. So in terms of time, it won't really take much at all. We would just have to prepare, an official staff report and the changes for the next appropriate meeting. But yeah, just kind of want to get your opinion on if you think staff should move forward or if we should hold off for the moment.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Bryce. One of the questions I have, with all the non-conforming properties that we currently have, how does this impact, say for instance, a building that is non-conforming at this time, and we would take additional right-of-way, and it would make that property non-developable if they had a fire, or I guess it just makes me wonder, in that situation, does that property become unusable, and also acquiring this property, what kind of a cost are we looking at, or what type of a time frame to actually go through this?
Yeah, and I probably should have been, probably should have clarified, we're not looking to acquire any, property at this time. It just would allow for kind of more of a straightforward process if we were to ever go through that. And in a lot of cases, we wouldn't really acquire the property. It would be dedicated, like the one on McMillan where they dedicated the 7 feet. So a lot of times the, acquiring the right-of-way dedication would come through the certified survey map. So I guess what I should clarify is that it's not like the city's out, trying to go to property owners and try to acquire to expand. This would be more of an incremental approach of every time that there's a land division, a CSM, lot combination, we would then, which has, been our standard practice to acquire at that time. This would just allow for a reduction in the amount of times that we have a non-conforming situation. Now, in regards to your question about the non-conformity, so when it comes to non-conformities, a lot of times it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. We have to take a look at, the existing conditions, when exactly those were, whether it is legally non-conforming or illegally non-conforming, we have to look into that. So it's hard to really give a great example at this time. However, we do have a section on non-conforming situations. So if there is a fire, if there's damage that was basically an act of God, if it's within certain threshold, like 50% of the assessed value, they can rebuild like a 1-for-1, so they could do the same exact building. We also do allow in our code to basically keep, if there's a non-conforming setback, like along the street, and you have a house that, let's say you're 10 feet from the property at the closest point, and your house kind of juts out, so there's like the rest of the house is, 10 feet from that 10-foot setback, and you want to do an addition up to that 10 feet. You can typically do that as long as you don't go any closer to the road or the property line in that case. So there are situations in our code that allow us for some sort of improvement to the property. But yeah, once again, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. This tries to attempt to reduce the amount of times that we're going to have a situation like that. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of if there's any example I could give, but I think in this case, it should help that and reduce that, so that we don't have to worry about that. Hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Question about the areas where the code says 0-foot setback. Does this map here encompass any of that area? Or is that really just on Main Street downtown?
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly offhand. I had wrote the staff report like 5 months ago. DMU, so the Downtown Mixed Use District, that does not have there's no requirement for the major street. So, most of the properties, between, on Central up until, let's just say 11th, I think, offhand, those would not have to meet. And then I believe that the UMU also says that there's a 0-foot setback. There is something I think that we have to change in the UMU to clarify that it is 0 feet and that the major street would not apply. That was, I think, one of the changes that we were looking at doing. But the original intent was basically the UMU and the DMU, you would not have to meet that requirement. And the UMU are some of the properties that are mixed use along some of the commercial corridors. So for example, Peach and like 4th Street would be a good example of where those do show up on the map. However, because they're in the UMU, they would be exempt from those requirements. So the best way, the reason why we don't want to adjust the map for those specific properties are if they ever get rezoned to a different district, it's just easier to exempt it in the text rather than on the map.
Okay, yeah, that was my main concern, is that we didn't affect the areas that are currently 0 foot setback.
Yep. Yeah, and like I said, I would clarify the UMU situation because I do remember talking with the zoning administrator on how it's not necessarily clear because it talks about there's a 0 foot setback in UMU, but then that somewhere it says not applicable for the UMU. But like I said, I want to clarify that it's crystal clear that would not apply.
Sounds good.
Any other questions, comments?
I would just recommend we move forward with these changes.
Yes,
Sounds good.
I have a question for clarification, Bryce. I want to make sure I understand this. So you're saying huh? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So this rule already exists. The changes actually make it a less severe rule from the way I'm understanding this, because instead of requiring 50 feet, you're taking into consideration, what do you want to say, the property, and then saying, okay, we're just going to add 10 feet. So then maybe somebody only has to have it back 30 feet instead of 50. Am I understanding that correct? Okay. And I guess my question, yeah, go ahead.
Just for a real quick example, so the new car wash where the bowling alley used to be, that typically would be a 50-foot requirement that they have to meet. There is, as of right now, there are exceptions where you can look at like the Culver's property and the property to the northeast. I can't blanking on the name.
Mm-hmm.
You could look at their buildings, and if they're closer than 50 feet, you can take the average of those and build. So let's say that the average came out to 45 feet. They could go up to 45 feet. That's how it could occur now. With these changes, it would just be a 30-foot requirement.
Okay. That was my other question, is just if you have existing buildings and then you have something new, or in the case of the example you gave where the bowling alley was converted to a different kind of business, that doesn't look strange from the street, where you have some businesses a lot closer to the street and then some businesses a lot farther away. So you're saying the newer business wouldn't have to be set back that far because you're averaging, or in this case, taking the 30 feet.
Yeah, and I want to say I'd have to look back at the exact changes that we proposed back in 2020 or talked about in 2020. I want to say that we still kept the averaging to allow for a reduction even from that 30 feet if there were other examples. I have a feeling that that's not going to be, I feel like it won't be as applicable as it is now, because like, for example, the CMU district up in that area, most of those buildings are 30 to 50 feet. So the averaging would still be probably slightly over 30, probably 40 feet up there.
Mm-hmm.
Other parts of the town, there might be more averaging. So I think that we did keep the averaging in effect just for the, like you said, kind of the form of the, how the property looks when there's a building there compared to the neighboring properties. I think we kept it there. I think in this case, we're just making it a little bit more, we're just kind of taking a closer look at where it makes sense to have this requirement and to still make sure that they're able to build at an appropriate setback without, just kind of adding an arbitrary requirement that, quite honestly, like along Central, not a whole lot of buildings are more than 50 unless they're like the older, like the old Shopko Festival. But, more recent ones have been closer to the road.
Josh would like to make a comment if you'd like to come up to that would be fine.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I just had one question about the application of it. So if there's a setback that you have the original setback plus 10 feet in an area that you have on your table, Bryce, and let's say they had a CSM where they dedicated the required 10 feet, how would you address that? Or how would you, so if you know what I'm saying? So if they already have dedicated let's say they do a new CSM going forward after this is passed, and they've done the dedicated 10 feet, would they have to have another 10 foot of right of way or 10 foot of setback added to their setback if they're in an area that you described in your table?
Well, you helped with this, Josh, so I think you should tell me.
I didn't get to this
No,
part of it though. That's
Yeah, I know. No, in that case, I think we were just creating it where it would still apply. So even if the right of way is met, it would still have that 10-foot setback. I think we could certainly look to write something in to not allow that, but I just think it would get a little too convoluted. And I think in this case, adding 10-foot setback is not overly complicating things for a property owner. So I think that's the original intent, was just to keep it at that. And then actually the original intent internally that we had discussed was to kind of review this every, let's just say 5 years, 10 years, after there's been projects, if we ever do a right away with expansion, or, after we've acquired, let's say along McMillan, we've acquired all that, we just go back and update it. That was kind of the initial thought process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And I agree with John, we should just move forward. And I think that sounds like a great idea.
Do you think it might be appropriate to make a motion to direct Bryce to bring forward an amendment for your consideration next month that states what I think John is after?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion
Thank you.
carries. Thank you. Item number 10, discussion regarding considering allowing more residential use types with the SR6 zoning district and near the downtown area. Presenter Bryce Hembrook, planner.
All right, thank you. So you guys are lucky and get to hear me talk even more. So this is a topic that I can ramble on for hours, and we have kind of talked about it in the past, but we do have some new faces, and we also haven't talked about it in probably 4 or 5 months due to some lower Plan Commission numbers. We wanted to make sure that the majority of Plan Commission members were here before kind of discussing further, because there's just a lot to go over. So to kind of start the conversation, we had talked early on in this year of allowing more residential use types in the SR6 district, and generally, near the downtown area. And so the Plan Commission, you guys, discuss this, and so that you're generally open to considering changes. Obviously, there's a lot to, go over and discuss, but that you wanted to kind of discuss a little bit further. So, the SR6 district is our single-family residential district. It is our most dense single-family residential district. So we have SR2, which is the lowest density, SR3, SR4, and SR6. And SR6 actually is not exclusively, and I'll just skip ahead to the existing, I thought it was on here. In the SR6 district currently, we allow single-family and we allow 2-flat. So a 2-flat is a 2-unit residential structure where one unit is located above another unit. So in some cases, people call it a duplex. In our code, we call it a 2-flat. A duplex in our code is seen as something different, and we'll kind of go over that in a little bit. But just wanted to kind of touch on that. Those are the two main or two only residential uses in that district currently. And the initial conversation was to consider maybe allowing a duplex, a twin home, and townhomes as maybe residential uses that could be allowed in the SR6 district. And then as part of that conversation, it sounded like the Plan Commission was also open to at least discussing the possibility of considering 3 to 4 units, whether that's a multiplex or apartment. So I'll kind of go over the different uses here in a second. But before that, I do want to just show where the SR6 district is located. So when I had initially talked with the Plan Commission, I'd said, it's close to downtown, but also some of the older parts of town. What you'll notice here is it does actually extend quite a bit to the north here, almost by the Hampton Inn, not too far up to the north there. And then does extend down to the south past 21st, around 21st Street. So it is kind of a large zoning district, but when I had initially started those conversations, I was kind of thinking more in the, to the south of the Veterans Parkway to about 14th, and then even to the north of Veterans to about Daggy or Edison was kind of when I think of SR6 districts that might be appropriate for 2, 3, 4 units, and where there are actually non-conforming uses there currently, especially, on Arnold, there's a couple examples around the downtown area. There's a couple examples of 3 to 4 units. But I did want to just show that there are some to the north of Ives Street that when you look at that area, it doesn't really necessarily feel like SR6 compared to some of the other areas in the city. One of the things I do want to note is the Plan Commission and Common Council recently approved changes to reduce the minimum lot area requirements in the SR4 and SR6 district. So there are actually a decent number of properties on the north side here and even on the south side that could actually be zoned SR4 instead if the Plan Commission wanted to, let's say, allow for 2 to 4 units or 2 units, 3 units, however the Plan Commission and Common Council want to, if they want to allow, they could allow it in certain areas and then rezone other portions that are more single family in nature to, let's say, SR4. So just kind of want to throw that out there. Also, as I'm kind of going through this, some things to kind of consider. There's really a lot of ways that we can approach this, but one major thing that I'd like to kind of get a sense of if the Plan Commission wants to move forward and discuss this further would these be permitted by right or conditional uses? Would some of the uses be permitted by right or conditional use? And just for a little bit of background, so generally when it's permitted by right, it's typically approved by staff administratively. If it's conditional use, it would go through a public hearing, neighbors would be notified, and then there would be a recommendation by the Plan Commission and approval by the Common Council. Parking, Plan Commission can approve parking exceptions for any requested exception. This is one thing where, as I was kind of looking through some of the potential changes for 3 to 4 units, the one thing that's going to really factor into what's possible here is parking requirements for if the Plan Commission wanted to allow apartments or multiplexes, parking requirements would require more parking and would kind of take away from the effect of trying to add, 1 or 2 more units, try to add a little bit more what we call gentle density. The parking would kind of really limit what you could do. And so you would almost want to be able to approve parking exceptions for specific cases. And one of the other things we're noticing statewide, nationwide, and even in the community is household sizes are going down. There are more renters where there are 1.3 persons per unit, I think is a number that I've been seeing a lot. So it's not necessarily that there's 2, 3, 4 people living in these apartments anymore. It's typically maybe 1, sometimes 2. So there might not be a need for that typical, 2 cars per unit that we used to see as more common. Another thing is minimum lot area requirement. So that requirement often does dictate the density for multi-unit buildings. So Plan Commission would have to, consider they want to allow these, should there be a base minimum lot area requirement for all new lots, or should there be a square footage requirement per dwelling unit? Typically right now it's per dwelling unit. But keep in mind, there are other factors that impact what can be built, how many units can be constructed, such as setbacks, building coverage of the lot, parking requirements again, and then building code requirements. So, if a building is, let's say, 800 square feet and they try to put 4 units in there, it most likely can't, at 200 square feet, a unit that most likely, I don't want to say it can't for sure, but most likely would not be allowed because of building code requirements and, ingress, egress. So there are other factors that go into what would be allowed there. And then just for another note, typical lot size. So oftentimes in the SR6 district, lots are 6,952 square feet or 44 feet wide by 158. And we also do see a number of double lots, which are 88 by 158 or 13,900 square feet. So the double lots are kind of where we think may be appropriate for 3 to 4 unit buildings if you guys would like to explore that option. That's where there could still be a little bit of parking provided. And then if you guys do want to allow buildings with 3 to 4 units, would there be design guidelines? And I'll kind of, like I said, I'll go over the different types of uses and I'll kind of show what I mean on maybe the Plan Commission would like to allow these, but be a little bit more specific on the context of the development and look at how the site plan lays out, how the architectural features come into effect. So just kind of keep those things in mind as I ramble on here. So single family, I think everyone's familiar with the single family residence. So 1 unit on 1 property. Like I said, 2 flat is 1 unit above the other. This is currently allowed in the SR6 district now. And one of the main reasons, I don't know if Josh is still there or not, but we had initially talked about, why is 2 flat allowed but not a duplex? And I think the consensus was that from the street view, it appears like a single family house. Obviously, you can tell that there's 2 doors and there would be 2 utility meters, but in terms of size, in terms of the form, it doesn't look all that different than a single family residential. And you will see a number of 2 flats throughout the SR6 district, specifically more towards the downtown area, the area where a lot of these buildings were constructed pre-1940. For example. And then a twin house. So a twin house and a duplex, these are currently not allowed in SR6, but twin house and duplex are essentially almost the same thing, except for the difference is that for a twin house, the property line would run through the middle of the building. So there would technically be, it's single family attached 2 units, but it appears like a duplex, whereas a duplex, it's 2 units on 1 lot. So like I mentioned, in terms of the look of it, obviously the styles are different, but in terms of, if you're walking down the street, no one's going to say, hey, look, that's a twin home unless you're an urban planner or a plan commission member. But we look at it differently in order to tell how many units are on 1 lot compared to 2 on 1 lot. And then townhouse. So one of the other things that we had initially discussed was maybe to allow 3 to 4 unit townhomes in the SR6 district. So townhomes are attached 2-story residences, each having a private individual access. The dwelling unit may be located on its own lot or within a group development. Each dwelling unit shares at least 1 common wall with an abutting dwelling unit. So the initial thought with this is, for example, if it's on its own property, it would be a single family attached building. To us, we don't see that as being much different than if you allow twin home, you could allow townhomes and it would basically be a single family attached. To me, that makes sense in an SR6 district. So we wanted to kind of pose that question. And then apartment and multiplex. So we have 2 definitions where, once again, it's not all that much noticeable in the difference. But the apartment is basically, you think of a typical apartment where there's 3 or more individual attached dwelling units which have an access with a shared entrance or hallway, whereas a multiplex has individual access entrances. So for example, I lived up by Menards. I had, my own hallway that led upstairs. That was a multiplex. An apartment would have, 1 common area, or at least 1 common area that you'd have to go through in order to access your room. And at one point or the other, we had talked about maybe looking at changing it to just multifamily and not necessarily going into the difference. But as of right now, we're looking to probably maintain, the apartment versus multiplex style. But here's an example of, I think a good example of a 4-unit building where it doesn't necessarily stand out. I don't think most people could really tell just from driving by or walking by that there's 4 units, unless you go back and take a peek here, you can kind of see additional units in the back. But from a size standpoint, it doesn't necessarily stand out. And it fits on the typical 88-foot double lot. And in some cases, it could fit in, or could definitely fit in more narrow lots, depending on the exact layout. And here's another example that I included. One of my relatives from my hometown actually lived in this multiplex. So when you walk by, you can barely even tell the difference that it is a 4-plex. Obviously, once again, you can, if you look for the meter, you can find it. You can typically find the 4 entrances, but it doesn't necessarily stand out as a garden apartment. So for example, the apartments I lived on, the multiplex that I lived on, those stand out as what you would consider a modern day apartment. These kind of fit into the context of a more dense neighborhood. So for example, this was built on a 77-foot lot. 77 foot wide lot, and 88 feet is kind of what we see for the double lot. So for example, that could be something that could fit on a decent amount of properties within the SR6 district, but still kind of maintain conformity and form with the rest of the area. And then as you can see here too, there's kind of parking in the back. So that's kind of how some of these handle parking is, to have like a garage access in the back. And then here's another example of some newer 4-unit apartments that I think these are in Nebraska for in a development that my company had helped worked with the civil engineering, and it turned out to be a really great project. So in the right context and the right form, these can add gentle density, where you would have an increase in the density per acre, which also typically increases the assessed value per acre on lots that are already have street access, they already have utilities. You're not constructing a new street, you're not adding all these utilities, you're not maintaining it, at least for the immediate future. So this is kind of a way to increase housing options near the downtown, where you can walk to restaurants, you can walk to grocery store, or north of Veterans Parkway, you're still close enough to some of the key commercial areas. So this is kind of a way where you could, if you design it the correct way, it can, I think, look appropriate in a lot of SR6 settings, but not necessarily all properties that are currently zoned SR6. So that's one thing I did want to just mention is I think the Plan Commission, if they do want to allow some multifamily, I think it's worth further consideration on where that might be allowed. Would there be a new zoning district? Would we maybe rezone, certain properties to SR4, so it's just single family? So those are also some things to consider as well. And then I created a SketchUp design to just kind of show an example. So I took a sample city block. So especially near the downtown, you'll see this 2.4 acres, give or take, is typical. And it's not an exact replica of a neighborhood, but it's pretty close. In terms of the units, I had about 16 to 19 units is pretty typical in that area. So I showed some 2 flats. So just for reference, these lines kind of show how many units. So there's 2 units here, 1 unit here. So this is what is currently allowed. And then this is, if the changes were approved, you could have some 4 units here, especially along a corner where you could still have access along an alley to provide that in the back. You could have access to the back through here. Townhomes that are on, individual lots, or on one lot, you could fit, 4 townhomes here, duplex here. So this kind of shows how it would be an increase in density, but in my opinion, when you look at it from a form standpoint, it doesn't seem like a drastic change. It's not like you're adding, 24 unit multiplex next to a single family, and, you know, the 24 unit takes, you know, 6 typical city lots. It's more gentle, as like we said, gentle density to try to increase the density, you know, in the downtown area. But in my opinion, not a stark noticeable difference. The other thing I do want to mention though is, you know, the majority of the SR6 district is already built up. There's, you know, some infill properties. There's some existing homes that could be converted to maybe a 2-unit, maybe a 3-unit. But we really wouldn't expect there to be that many new developments that would be now able to build in the SR6 district. We would anticipate that over a course of 5 years, you'd probably see 1 to 3 per year, if that. So this would basically allow for the flexibility, but SR6 district is not necessarily a zoning district that we typically have in newer areas. For example, Green Acres is a SR4 district, and that is medium density residential, but we don't usually have these in newer areas. These are generally where there's already, you know, 90% of the neighborhood is already there. So that's just one thing to consider is although I showed this as 24 units and, you know, multiple 4 units on the same block, the chances of that happening if you were to approve these changes is I would say not likely. But I just kind of want to show relatively what that would look like in comparison. So I'm going over a lot and I expect that there's probably questions. But one thing I did want to just kind of leave you with is some final thoughts. Since I have been kind of looking into this for probably 5 or 6 months now, and kind of talked with other staff members. I think if the Plan Commission wants to allow twin houses, duplexes, and townhouses in the current SR6 district, staff would be, you know, supportive within the existing zoning district boundaries. I think this is something that we were looking to potentially do years ago. Once again, with the thought process that we already do allow 2-family units as 2 flats. Twin houses and townhouses can be considered single family attached, you know, 3 to 4 units. To me, it seems like it's a reasonable, you know, increase. Second, if Plan Commission wants to allow 3 to 4 units besides townhouses, which are basically single family attached, staff recommends considering creating either a new district, an overlay district, or, you know, considering some other alternatives than allowing on all SR6 properties within existing zoning district boundaries. If the Plan Commission wants to limit certain areas of the city from these uses, we could rezone certain properties to SR4. For example, I think the ones on the north side near the Hampton Inn, for, you know, just for reference, those are probably more suited for SR4, whereas, you know, near the downtown along Arnold Street, those are probably better for SR6. We could look into rezoning some to SR4 because the minimum lot width changes have allowed for those to be rezoned to a different district. So those are some of my final thoughts. One other thing that I didn't mention that I really wanted to was we had kind of talked too about, you know, right now it's called the single family residential district, SR6. And I kind of mentioned that, you know, if we're going to allow these mix of uses, you know, should we consider a name change and kind of rebranding that SR6 district? And it seemed like the general consensus that that's what we should do. So one of the things that I kind of pitched was like changing it from SR6 single family residential to SR6 small scale residential. So that's kind of a way to kind of rebrand it, but then to mention that, you know, generally there should be about 6 dwelling units per acre. Here's the type of uses that would be allowed. Instead of saying, you know, this is a single family district, but you can have apartments, to me, that just didn't make sense. So that was one other thing that we'd probably look at changing too. So like I said, I threw a lot out at you. I'm sure there's questions. But I think more than anything, it would just be good to know, you know, is this something that we want to move forward with? If that's the case, do we want to look at the twin houses, duplexes, and townhomes? Do we want to look at 3 to 4 units? You know, kind of where are you guys thinking? Or should we just kind of keep everything status quo and not really move forward at this time? Or is there any information or any examples that you want me to provide at like next month's meeting? I can certainly try to help answer any questions.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bryce. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but this is extremely exciting to me.
Yeah.
I like all of it, I guess. If you could bring something back with some suggestion, more concrete suggestions on what areas may be better going SR4, I think it would be a little more digestible for everybody rather than us trying to pick that.
Right.
With that being said, I think a lot of these areas with the 44-foot lots, I would say the majority of these buildings are 100+ years old. And over the course of time, this is going to enhance development in a very good way. There are quite a few lots too that now with our setback changes and stuff we've done, that it's going to open up the possibility to bring developers in that we're looking at, a small home going on there. And if they can get multi-family properties on there, I just think it makes a lot of sense to do it. I guess I would leave the ideas on the breakdown on what areas should be what to you. You have a strong grip on this and I don't, but I would just like to say thank you for bringing it forward. I like it.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Mike was just saying. I think a name change is a good idea. And I think this concept in general is something we should figure out how to move forward with in terms of getting more housing density, allowing for more flexibility in what types of housing go in these districts. I think we need to figure out how to get more density out of it. So I'd like to figure out how to find as much opportunity for multifamily as possible. And if that means some rezoning, I think that's a good idea to do. And I do think this dovetails really well with the changes we made to the setbacks recently as well.
Does the city of Marshfield have a lot of interest in the 3 to 4 units? I mean, contractors building them?
One of the things.
There's-
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Bryce. I apologize.
No worries. I'll just briefly. There's not a lot of there's a lot of people that ask me about the possibility for it. Now, whether or not they would actually have the means and the ability to create 3 to 4 unit, developments, I'm not 100% sure. I did get a lot of questions throughout my time with, working with Marshfield, property owners, developers. And I think it's kind of a little bit of, they knew it wasn't really allowed, so they just didn't try. But then also some local developers may not be quite aware on how they can redevelop the site and still meet setbacks. And so sometimes it's just a matter of trying to educate and work with local developers. So I think that there would be enough people that would be interested in it. It's just kind of getting the word out there. I know that duplexes have been pretty popular recently. We recently approved townhomes in the new Green Acres. And so I guess depending on how quickly those are going, I think that there's generally interest in it. And then in the downtown area, I do know, there has been interest from younger families and even, empty nesters that don't necessarily want to mow the lawn or take care of, the snow removal, and they'd rather just be close to a grocery store. I think there is definitely more interest in being able to buy a condo that's a townhouse that's downtown, or just to rent for a little bit. Obviously, everyone knows we have a large hospital population. There's a lot of short-term workers that live here for 2, 3, 4 years. I was one at one point, where they don't necessarily want to buy a house, but they also don't want to, live where I live, where they had to kind of go across town to do pretty much anything. So I think that there's definitely an interest for it. There just hasn't been much happening or much that would allow for that to develop. So I think that this would definitely be an improvement. And I think that this is one way to address that.
I think the evidence is the popularity of duplexes with developers, right? And the economics of multifamily are, to my understanding, pretty attractive where you can do it. So.
I like it.
Yeah, and like I said, thank you. So the one thing that I did also want to touch on is, in the comprehensive plan, we do talk about, trying to utilize development where there's already existing infrastructure. And I think that's key because the one thing I do want to just touch on is I often hear arguments from individuals where, oh, I would never want to live in a duplex, near the downtown. I would never want what we really want to do is focus on allowing permitting housing options of all types for all different types of people. There's like I said, there is a household size. They are decreasing. Typically, there's lower household sizes. There is older householder ages, and so there's kind of a shift right now in the market. And so just because this isn't something that everyone would want to buy that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking to allow for this for a certain type of people. So that way, the younger families that do want to buy a house, that might open up in the SR2, SR3 districts where, like I said, you have, maybe an empty nester couple that wants to kind of, downsize. Their house opens up, a young family can move into the SR2, SR3, on the outskirts of town. But then, you have more people move into the SR6. So this is really an approach to try to attract all different types of homeowners, renters, et cetera. And like I said, the other thing to add is, we're talking about we focus on the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan. And one of the pushes is to get more people in the downtown area, get more people to go to restaurants, go to shopping. And so the more density you can add nearby where you can just walk there, that is really a major approach to try to get things moving in terms of the redevelopment. And the downtown has seen, I think, a resurgence in terms of lower vacancies. I just drove through, the last couple of weeks, and I keep seeing new businesses. The facades are improving. So there's a lot of energy around this area. And I think by allowing for more housing options nearby, it's just a benefit, I think, to the city in general.
I really like what you presented tonight, Bryce. If the planning commission could help getting the 2, the 3, the 4 units, get the word out there and, we could do whatever we can to help the process move along.
Did you want to make a motion to that, Kim?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. And I would just add in, I would want to see it limited to a 4-unit. Just because if I were a single family house owner, I wouldn't want how many, because technically if you could develop it and you wanted to, you could be putting 4 and 4 and 4 and 4 and 4. If I was in a nice, quiet neighborhood as a single family house owner, I wouldn't want a lot of people with all of the noise and all of what that brings. But I could definitely see expanding, and it just makes sense to include a duplex if you're already having, what did you call it? A 2-top, one above the other?
2 flat.
Say it again?
2 flat.
2 flat, yes. It makes sense to include a duplex, triplexes definitely. And I think embracing the diversity as currently a single person who runs a business, I would love to be able to buy a condo that was close to downtown. So I definitely see the need, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people in similar situations that you mentioned that would be very excited to own properties like this, or to rent, or to have that available.
I like this conversation, and I agree with where many of you are going. I just want to clarify what your motion is, because Bryce covered a lot of territory.
Yeah.
Is it specifically to the idea, what?
It's
Okay, yeah.
to allow more residential use types in SR6. So we're making a motion to allow, I don't know.
Bryce, can you go back to that one slide that had 3 potential recommendations?
Yeah.
You called them final thoughts. I think that's what I want to play off in terms of where we're going here.
And that's where I'm saying I would
wasn't
limit it to
necessarily
up to the 4-plex, but no more.
Okay. All right. Was that your thought as well, Jim?
Yes, help promote 2, 3 to 4 units.
In SR6?
Yes.
Okay.
And renaming.
Yeah, and renaming
Because I know
it.
you were talking, Mike, about SR,
Yeah,
SR4.
don't we, I mean, don't want to squash anything here, but don't we want to see if we're going to be changing other districts and all that? Would it be best to bring this back rather than make the motion
Okay.
right now? And
Yeah.
so we can see a better layout, because otherwise we may.
That's what I thought we're motioning to.
Yeah, maybe the motion
To
is.
bring this back
With,
with,
with more meat on it.
that focus.
Finally.
Yes.
So Brad can start the ball
Yes.
rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I
to.
like that.
Kim, we're honestly not trying to put words in your mouth. It may seem that way right now.
Sorry.
But is your motion, and because what I'm hearing Jocelyn say is to take this and come back more developed so that we can look at acting on it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
And just for clarification, that is to come back, not as a text amendment,
No.
but another discussion item, but with more,
Yeah.
narrow focus.
yeah,
correct?
we're not tight enough to have a text amendment drawn up yet, but I think that's what they're saying. They're very interested and I agree with them.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Any other
Okay, thank you.
conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce, for all that great information again. Wow, how exciting. One more step for
Yeah,
Marshfield.
thank you everyone for your input. There was a lot to cover, and so I appreciate all the feedback. I didn't want to go too much into one subject until I knew how you guys felt about it. So it definitely helped to hear everyone's perspective. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Item number 11, staff updates.
For the first time in a while, I don't really have one. Maybe it's been a long, maybe it's been a long. Well,
Exactly.
Maybe I've been here too many hours today, but
Yeah.
I've got nothing new to add that
Me
would
too.
be, I think, that's pretty rare. I usually have a couple of items.
Item 12, items for future agendas. Seeing none, who would like to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn.
Mike moves to adjourn and Jake seconds. Thank you all. Have a great evening and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.